Today, a university like the LSE certainly has to acknowledge that it is in competition for the best students, all of whom have choices they can exercise, and many of them choices which run across national and continental borders. We are in competition too, for staff. The academic job market is one of the most global there is. And in the 21st century, English is the new Latin, so universities in English-speaking countries are exposed to more intensive competition than those elsewhere. We are in competition for government funding through the assessment of research quality. We are in competition for research contracts from public and private sector sources, and indeed we are in competition for the philanthropic pound. Many of our own donors were at more than one university, and indeed think of the LSE's requests alongside those of other charities to which they are committed. That is a competitive environment which is particularly visible to a vice-chancellor.
Speaker is discussing about competition for the best students. According to the speaker, universities has to acknowledge for the best students and staff. Moreover, she talked about many English-speaking countries are getting exposed for more intensive competitions, such as government funding, research contracts and philanthropic pound. She mentioned that the environment is so competitive which can be visible to a vice-chancellor.
Today we're going to recount heroic tales of superhuman feats of strength, when in the face of disaster, some people are said to have summoned up incredible physical power to lift a car off of an accident victim, move giant rocks, or like Big John of song, single-handedly hold up a collapsing beam to let the other miners escape. Are such stories true? There are many anecdotes supporting the idea, but we're going to take a fact-based look at whether or not it truly is possible for an adrenaline-charged person to temporarily gain massive strength. In proper terminology, such a temporary boost of physical power would be called hysterical strength. The stories are almost always in the form of one person lifting a car off of another. And even lifting many cars by several inches still leaves most of its weight supported by the suspension springs. But our purpose today is not to debunk any of these specific stories. The majority of them are anecdotal, and interestingly, not repeatable. In many cases, the person who summoned the super strength later tried it again only to find that they couldn't do it. Basically, what we have is a respectably large body of anecdotal evidence that suggests that in times of crisis, danger, or fear, some people have the ability to temporarily exercise superhuman strength.
The speaker is discussing the heroic tales of superhuman feats of strength. Firstly, he talks about some people have incredible physical power to lift a car off of an accident victim or to move giant rocks. Secondly, he talks about the proper terminology where temporary boost of physical power would be called hysterical strength, and the stories are almost always in the form of one person lifting a car off of another. He mentions that our purpose is not to debunk the specific stories, as the majority of them are anecdotal and interestingly not repeatable, and in times of crisis, danger, or fear, some people have the ability to temporarily exercise superhuman strength.
Turner, not surprisingly, painted one of the earliest pictures of London's fog in the 1835 painting The Thames Above Waterloo Bridge. Turner, as a true-born Londoner, is advertising his familiarity with London's air problem by putting smoke and atmospheric pollution at its centre. And as you can see in here, the bridge is the central element, which is a theme that's later taken up by Monet. And it's partly obscured by the steam and smoke which rises from both sides of the river. Here we see a shot tower, I think you can just about see it, which was constructed in 1826. Do you know what shot towers are? They produce shot for guns, ammunition, and they were very smoky, one of the more smoky industries. But it's barely visible, as you can see, as are the various industries on the Lambeth side of the river. On this side, there's a steamship about to dock or preparing to leave. It's black smoke thrusting up to join the kind of swirling arc of smoke there. William Rodner sees this painting as a potent essay on the energy and complexity of modern polluted urbanism. Smoke, I think, here represents a flourishing economy which brings employment and food on tables, but also the dirt and pollution associated with its fumes. All seems to be tainted by a sulphurous yellow.
The speaker was discussing about focusing on the fact which is mentioned that the artistic representation of London fog by Turner, who advertised his familiarity with London's air problem by putting pollution at the center of painting. He mentioned that most elements in the painting are partly obscured by smoke. He described considering the most substantial insights which are specified here. The painting has been seen as a potent essay on the energy and complexity of modern polluted urbanism. Moreover, smoke represents both flourishing economy and pollution back in the old age.
I have said before that you can't have a civilization that doesn't have art. When we think about the great civilizations historically, all of them had great production of culture and art because a society has to be able to observe itself. And the sophistication of the great civilizations were their ability to look at themselves. And what allows a society to do that are the producers of art and culture. It would mirror back to the core of the society exactly what is being produced at that moment, how people are thinking of themselves, and how individuals are relating to the social structure at that time. Art is the vehicle through which we understand that. Were you to take away art, what would be that mirror? How would we see what we are about? How would we understand what was going on in Paris at the time of the Impressionists when people were learning to see in a completely different way. Cinematography, all of these things are just emerging, and here are people looking at the world in a very different way, which was considered so radical at the time.
The speaker was discussing about art and civilization. She mentioned that art is like a vehicle through which we understand our society. She talked about at the time of Impressionists when people were learning to see in a completely different way in pre-cinematography period, and people has started looking at the world in a very different way. Overall, we can say that speaker has explained all the key features about art and civilization very clearly.
With over 40 years unrivaled experience and a worldwide reputation, BSI leads the way in testing and certification of fire safety products. Based in our dedicated labs in Hemel Hempstead, our team provides BSI kite mark and CE testing and certification for a broad range of products including fire extinguishers, hoses, alarm panels and heat and smoke detectors. We help clients to gain access into the European market by ensuring that products meet all the CE mark requirements. And we're familiar with the market access regulations of most countries across the world, enabling customers to enter markets globally. The BSI kite mark is categorized as a British super brand and acknowledged the world over as a symbol of trust, integrity and quality. It provides the reassurance that vital product safety and performance requirements have been met. Our team subjects each product to a rigorous set of tests, along with robust production control audits, designed specifically to ensure that they perform to required standards of safety and quality. We test for compatibility of fire detection and fire alarm system components to ensure that they're compatible and connectable. This service meets the growing requirement of European regulatory authorities to meet national installation guidelines. We also perform tests on individual detection components. Fire suppression products, such as fire extinguishers, are subjected to rigorous tests designed to ensure that they're effective, safe, and capable of performing in environments and conditions in which they're stored and used. The symbols for BSI kite mark and CE certification represent quality, safety, and trust. For specifiers, they demonstrate a commitment to best practice procurement, and for the public, they provide the reassurance that fire safety products are effective and reliable.
Speaker is discussing about testing and certification of fire safety products. According to the speaker, BSI is the leader for providing certification for a broad range of products, such as fire extinguishers, hoses, and alarm panels, and makes sure it meets all the C requirements. It is also a British super brand for its symbol of trust, integrity, and quality. Moreover, the certification for BSI Kite represents quality, safety, and trust.
Only one country, tiny little Bhutan, wedged between China and India, has adopted the gross national happiness as the central index of government policy, and actually has had a good deal of success in education and in health and in economic growth and in environmental preservation, and they have a rather sophisticated way of measuring the effects of different policies on people's happiness. But they are the only country to go that far. But you're now beginning to get other countries interested enough to do kind of white paper policy analyses about whether happiness research, what effects would it have if we used it more for public policy. You're beginning to get countries like Australia, France, Great Britain that are considering publishing regular statistics on happiness. So it's beginning to become a subject of greater interest for policymakers and legislators in different advanced countries.
The speaker is discussing about Bhutan, which has adopted the gross national happiness. He mentions that it is a good deal for the success in education, in health and environmental preservation. He talks about the interest of other countries in white paper policy analysis of happiness research. In conclusion, the happiness is beginning to become a subject of greater interest for policymakers.
Computer scientist Hysterical Patel and his team are developing new sensing systems.
The initial focus was really around energy and water monitoring.
They built a new generation of smart sensors that monitor electronic interference on a home's power line or water pressure changes in the plumbing. Most of this technology has already found industrial applications, and Patel and his team turned their attention to adapting the technology for personal health monitoring.
So how do we take this noise and make it into a signal of interest was kind of the core of what we did for many years, and we're taking that work and applying it to other domains.
They're looking to take advantage of all the functionality built into our smartphones. With the user's permission, this app can use the microphone built into most smartphones to listen to background noises, such as coughing, searching for patterns that suggest a trip to the doctor might be in order.
We construct these models that try and understand how sound works, what its patterns are, and we give it a whole bunch of examples of different kinds of audio, things like people talking, things like people laughing, sneezing, and of course coughing.
This app uses a phone's camera to check hemoglobin levels in blood by analyzing the color of capillary fluids through the skin.
Generally, what happens is if you're anemic, your blood's going to be a little less red. And we take advantage of that by putting your finger over a camera of a phone. The camera of the phone can actually see the coloration of the blood.
And this test uses the camera to help parents worried about jaundice in newborn infants.
Now, jaundice is something that doctors who have seen tons of babies can just kind of figure out on a very basic level of, is this baby, do they need to get treatment, or are they in a good condition? Whereas a first-time parent has no idea necessarily what jaundice might look like.
The researchers say the built-in sensors found in smartphones are already commonplace, but their applications and their implications for our health and well-being may be more far-reaching than we ever imagined.
Speaker is discussing about new sensing system. According to the speaker, computer scientists are developing new sensing system. Firstly, the initial focus was around energy and water monitoring. She talks about adapting the technology for personal health monitoring. Moreover, scientists are looking to take advantage of all the functionality built in smartphones. The applications and implications for our health may be beyond our imagination.
I've been thinking a lot about the world recently and how it's changed over the last 20, 30, 40 years. 20 or 30 years ago, if a chicken caught a cold and sneezed and died in a remote village in East Asia, it would have been a tragedy for the chicken and its closest relatives, but I don't think there was much possibility of us fearing a global pandemic and the deaths of millions. 20 or 30 years ago, if a bank in North America lent too much money to some people who couldn't afford to pay it back, and the bank went bust, that was bad for the lender and bad for the borrower, but we didn't imagine it would bring the global economic system to its knees for nearly a decade. This is globalization. This is the miracle that has enabled us to transship our bodies and our minds and our words and our pictures and our ideas and our teaching and our learning around the planet ever faster and ever cheaper. It's brought a lot of bad stuff, like the stuff that I just described, but it's also brought a lot of good stuff. A lot of us are not aware of the extraordinary successes of the Millennium Development Goals, several of which have achieved their targets long before the due date. That proves that this species of humanity is capable of achieving extraordinary progress if it really acts together and it really tries hard.
Significantly focusing on the fact which is mentioned as the effect of globalization And it comprises that there is an unexpected side effect of globalization. Problems that once would have stayed local now have consequences worldwide, including both economy issues and infectious disease. Additionally, globalization is a miracle that has enabled us to transship our minds ever faster and cheaper and stimulate global development. Considering the most substantial insights which are specified here, it can be stated that humanity is capable of extraordinary progress if it really acts together